Hello, I'm Lorianne Lumbee with Authentic Freedom Academy and Temple of the Magdalene, and this is my YouTube channel called Mystics and Heretics. In this video, I want to share with you my own story of becoming a heretic. And I share this story because I feel as if my story is probably not unique, and that there are many of those who will find their way to this channel that might have a similar story or something of a similar variation. So I want to start first with my own background. I was raised Catholic and went to Catholic school for the majority of K through 12. And I was what I think I would call a devout Catholic. I was one of those weird kids that liked to go to Mass. I found the peacefulness and the quiet and the stillness within in that experience of the liturgy. And I found great meaning and purpose in that experience. Now, as you can imagine, I'm probably not a practicing Catholic anymore. And here's why. While I loved my Catholic experience, in fact, I pursued ministry within the Catholic Church as a lay minister. I received my training in the Catholic Church. I received my training as a spiritual director in the Catholic Church, my training as a liturgist, and as a leader of worship. I did all of that within the Catholic Church, and I worked in the church. I worked in the church for about 10 years. And I can say, honestly say, that the greatest joy I think I've ever experienced in my life was the time, at least the initial years, of working in the church. And prior to that, in my education and training. But the signs of heresy, were always present within me. I've always been one to question. I've always been one to use the mind that I've been given to reason, discern, and exercise my own truth. I have a very strong truth barometer in the center of my gut. And if something just doesn't make sense, I feel it. I know it. I question it. Perhaps my earliest recollection of questioning the doctrine and the dogma that I was expected to believe as a practicing Catholic was the teachings related to baptism. And by virtue of baptism, who was saved and who wasn't. There was something deep in my gut that had to ask, if a church is teaching about an unconditionally loving God, then who wouldn't go to heaven? At that time in my life, I still believed in a heaven. When it was brought to my attention that the unbaptized weren't welcome in God's home, when it was brought to my attention that people of other faith traditions were not saved, I simply refused to believe it. It didn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense to me that kind, loving, generous, amazing human beings that, whether they were Catholic or not, if they were living as kind, generous, loving human beings, how could they not be welcome by God? It made no sense to me. That's my first recollection of questioning. The second most powerful recollection is when I was in high school. I was a junior at LaSalle High School in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and I was sitting with the other 30 or 60 students in our religion class, and the priest who was teaching the class told us that simply by virtue of his ordination, he got to go to heaven before the rest of us. Now, at that point, I was a little bit more boisterous about my concern. I shot my hand up in the air and I said, "Father, that can't be correct. Are you telling me that just because you're a priest, you get to go to heaven first?" "Oh, yes," he said. And I said, "What if you murdered somebody or committed a mortal sin?" "Nope, I'm a priest. I still get to go to heaven before you." And I said flat out, "I'm sorry, Father." No, I didn't say you're sorry. I'm sorry. I said, "You're wrong. You're totally wrong. That can't be correct." So in this, I experienced my first punishment as a heretic. I watched Father Doyle open my grade book, cross out the A+ that I had in that course so far, and in a bright red permanent marker wrote C. That single action prevented me from being valedictorian of my class. Not that I care about that today, but at the time, it was important to me. Fast forward many years. I had just completed my ministry training. I was working in the church. I loved my job. I loved the team that I was working with. I was in the midst of my spiritual director's training, and I found out that my spiritual director, the director of our program, was a Reiki practitioner. Now, Reiki is something that I had heard about many years prior, something that I explored and tried to find a teacher and couldn't find one that was a good fit for me. So when the director of our program had a Reiki certificate hanging on her wall, and I should say she was a Catholic nun, I couldn't help but ask, "Please tell me more. I know I'm supposed to get trained in this. I don't really know what it is, but please guide me." She directed me to her teacher, who was also a Catholic nun, and I began the pursuit of what ended up being Reiki Master Practitioner. I was in the second year. Actually, I had just completed my Reiki 2 training. And in the middle of my contemplation, I hear a voice from the beyond, or a voice in the center of my being, saying, "Why don't you offer Reiki as part of your ministry?" And I said, as if there was a God outside of myself, "God, you must be mad. There is no way in hell the Catholic Church is going to let me share Reiki, offer Reiki as part of my church ministry." But the voice was insistent and persistent and consistent. As one friend has said to me, God is a nag. Well, she was definitely a nag over this. Offer Reiki, offer Reiki, offer Reiki. So at my annual review, contract signing, I met with our pastor at the time and said, "I've completed my Reiki 2 training. I'd like to offer this as part of my ministry." Without batting an eye, he said yes. That was the beginning of the end of my relationship with the Catholic Church. The majority of the community was either neutral, just didn't care, or were excited that I was offering Reiki as part of my ministry. They were the vast majority. Unfortunately, as seems to often be true in our world, it's the vocal minority that gets the attention. Well, me doing Reiki, a so-called Eastern practice in the Catholic Church, did not sit well with what I've come to call the self-appointed Inquisition. and thus the Inquisition began. This Inquisition included letters of complaint, meetings with me, letters to the bishop, constant complaint. After I left my ministry at this particular parish and was offering courses around different Catholic communities, this group sent representatives to harass and abuse and make a sham of the courses that I was trying to teach. I began to get letters from the chancellor of the diocese, entering into email dialogue where he insisted on knowing how this fit into Catholic teaching. Eventually, I heard rumors that the local diocese was about to issue a Reiki prohibition statement. In an attempt to thwart that, I contacted the chancellor and requested a meeting. He was excited and thrilled to meet with me. Yes, Lori, I can't wait to hear more about this. I really want to understand this some more. So I put on my best professional outfit, drove the hour to Green Bay, and sat in the reception area. Sat there for 45 minutes past our appointed time. At 15 minutes to the end of the hour, the chancellor strode in and said, "I'm sorry, I don't have much time to meet with you. I'm on my way to Rome." To which I inwardly or probably outwardly rolled my eyes. We sat down for a whole of 7.5 minutes as I tried to explain how I saw Reiki as absolutely fitting within Jesus' calling. We are called to heal. We're called to serve. We're called to be a voice of love and transformation in the world. How could this be wrong? The chancellor nodded and smiled and said, "Let's continue this conversation after I get back from Rome." And he quickly exited the room. The next day, it was announced that the Diocese of Green Bay had issued a prohibition statement against Reiki. Now, Lori Lumbie, as a Reiki practitioner, was explicitly described as participating in witchcraft, sorcery, and heresy. And it doesn't end there. Inspired by the actions of the Diocese of Green Bay, the United States Council of Catholic Bishops decided, let's get on this bandwagon. Let's start a witch hunt against all of the Reiki practitioners, many of whom, interestingly, are Catholic nuns. Most of whom are women. Let's start a witch hunt. Let's issue our own prohibition statement. So that's exactly what the United States Council of Catholic Bishops did. They issued a prohibition statement against Reiki. At that point, I had nothing to lose. And some other things had already collapsed in my relationship with the church. And so I wrote a letter. And then I was invited to write 2 articles. One for National Catholic Reporter and one for Reiki News Magazine. In both of which I attest to why I do Reiki and why at the time, as still a professed Catholic, I thought that Reiki, believed that Reiki absolutely fit within Jesus' call to be love in the world. Thanks to those 2 articles, I was then contacted by PBS. PBS reached out to me to be part of a piece that they were doing on Reiki in the Catholic Church. Of course, I said yes. So I and another Catholic nun from the Milwaukee area were both interviewed on the side of pro-Reiki. Why Reiki is reflective of Jesus' call to heal. And we were interviewed along with one of the bishops in the United States Council of Catholic Bishops who wrote the prohibition statement. And if I could be so bold as to say, our arguments far outweighed his ridiculous statements about how there is no support for Reiki, not only within Jesus' teachings, but within science itself. That was in 2008. I'm recording this in 2022. And what's happened since that time is that I've been effectively excommunicated, at least from the local Catholic Church. I've been told there's an enormous file on me at the bishop's office in Green Bay. And people continue to write letters of complaint about the work that I'm doing. Because God forbid we take Jesus' teaching seriously. God forbid we actually seek to bring sight to the blind, to set captives free, to love one another, to heal the sick, to clothe the naked, to feed the hungry. God forbid we take Jesus' teaching seriously. And I'm proud to take those teachings seriously because I understand that Jesus is one of the OG heretics. So I'm excited to hear your stories of heresy. How have you been labeled a heretic? How have you found yourself in the position of heretic? Please leave your comments and experiences in the comment section below. If you found this video to be helpful and informative, affirming, please like and share this message. And if you find this channel to be helpful, please subscribe and please ring the bell for notifications. And if you're in search of additional support, please reach out to me through my website, www.loriannlumpy.com, and take a look at all of my books, my online courses, my one-on-one support, and all other resources to help support the mystics and heretics in our world. Thank you.